We would love it if you Twitter along with us during this webinar with the hashtag FidARonWebinar. I would now like to hand it over to our host, Frau Robella, for her wonderful introduction. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. A very warm welcome to all of you. Since 2006, FIDA has been working towards increasing the representation of women on German corporate boards. Our work heightens the public, political, and economic awareness, signifying the importance of women on supervisory boards. Our activities show results. The number of women on Germany's supervisory and management boards is rising, and the German parliament has passed a law to strengthen female representation in senior positions in both private business and also public institutions. However, these changes come slowly. There is still much to be done. So please join us, support our goals, and get in touch. I want to thank Ingrid Maass, who brought our panelists together. She is also a FIDA member and very, very engaged in helping women to rise. So now, Ingrid, it's up to you. And I thank you all very much, and I wish us a wonderful discussion. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Silke. That was very nice of you, and hello, everybody. Welcome to our panel, Career Path for Women in Professional Services. My name is Ingrid Mars, and I am a white zebra. I have always worked in professional services, and I was almost always one of very, very few women. So I felt like everybody else, but I was missing the stripes to be an inconspicuous member of the team. I always missed diversity, and that's why I'm really glad to be moderating this high-level panel today. Before I introduce the panelists to you, we would like to come to know you, our audience, a little better. And we would like you to answer the questions that will come up on your screen just now. And we will share the results with you after the panel. So if you please click on which kind of zebra are you? So I am a white zebra. So does it look good? So can we start the panel? Great. So let me first introduce our panelists, which I'm very proud to have here. First, we have Professor Dr. Laura Empson. After starting her career in investment banking and strategy consulting, Laura, for the past 30 years, has been researching professionals in professional service firms. First at London Business School and Oxford University, and then at Cass Business School in London. At Cass, she is a professor in the management of professional service firms and director for the Center of Professional Service Firms. She's also a senior research fellow at Harvard Law School. And she is the author of a very interesting book, which I'm holding up into the camera because I'm about to read it, or I'm half through, as you can see. It's called Leading Professionals, Our Politics and Prima Donnas. And what I've read from it is really great. When I asked what motivated her to dedicate the past 30 years of her life to studying professionals, she says, I'm committed to helping leaders create thriving professional organizations. I aim to discover and explain complex organizational dynamics that are unknown, repressed, or misunderstood. These dynamics often create confusion, provoke conflict, and drain the energy of an organization. By revealing and explaining these phenomena, I help professionals recognize and cherish what is good about their organization and challenge and change what is bad. So thank you very much for being here, Laura. Our second guest is Dr. Constanze Ulmer-Eilfort. Constanze is a lawyer with a focus on intellectual property and a special industry expertise in life sciences. She has been a partner with Baker McKenzie since 1998. And for the last 3 years, she has been a member of the Global Executive Committee of Baker McKenzie, which, by the way, is a $3 billion international law firm. She is now chair of the EMEA region, chair of the Global Financial Committee, and chair of the Global Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And she also leads the Global Governance Project. A guide in her career, she says, has been the belief that it is liberating to be courageous and accept challenges, even when things may not go well all the time. Her 3 kids are most important in her life, next to her love for the city of Rome, for playing the grand piano, and her hiking and mountain climbing. And our third guest is Hubert Barth. Hubert is a German public auditor and tax advisor. He has been a partner with EY since 2006, and for the last 3 years has been head of assurance in Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, and also the country managing partner of EY in Germany. Hubert is married, has also 3 children like Constanze, and he loves sports, skiing, stand-up paddling, and I know he's an avid triathlete. So let's start the panel and start with the obvious question. And the obvious question is, how many women are there in professional services at all? And Hubert, how many women does EY in Germany and internationally employ in a professional role, and how many are partners?
Well, when you look at our company, and thanks for the kind introductions, Ingrid, and hello to my fellow colleagues on this panel here, and hello to everybody who is listening to it. EY, we're pretty good when it comes to the entry level. So when I look at our firm globally or on a European level, globally, we have roughly 280,000 people. On an EMEA level, we are 90,000 people. When I look at Germany, Switzerland, Austria, we run that as a group. In all 3 areas, we have basically roughly 45 to 50% women in the entry level. Now comes the problem. When we go up the ladder and discussing about the leadership level, and I focus here on the partner level, it's decreasing. And we're not there where we want to be. On a GSA level, we are roughly about 15% when it comes to partner level, which is far too few. And we're doing a lot to change this. But that change will not come overnight. We're working that for a couple of years, but we're moving really in the right directions. I'll come to that later, what kind of programs, what kind of conditions we also have put in place for promotions. But when you look at the landscape overall, in consulting, roughly 10% are women in senior consulting or senior professional services roles, which is not where it should be, because this is a profession where gender equality should not play a role at all.
So, Constanze, how's that in Baker McKenzie? And I will switch to headset because obviously my sound is bad for some participants.
So I hope you can hear me. Welcome also from me. Happy to be on this panel. So very similar situation at Baker McKenzie, a law firm as it is with E&Y. At entry levels, junior associates, we have more than 50% female. joining our firm, and we're seeing that over time we're losing more women than men. So when it comes to senior associate level in Germany, we're down to about 40%. For our salary partner level, we are at about 25%, and then equity partner, we are in Germany only at 5%. However, I want to also point out that the situation is different from country to country. So when we look to our office in Paris, we have about 30% equity partners. And when we look at our office in Madrid, we have almost 40% equity partners. So the question really also is interesting. Why is it so difficult in Germany as compared to other countries? Why is it?
Yeah.
There's also an interesting observation when we look at our office in Brazil. We have 50% equity partners, or even a little bit more than 50% equity partners. And sometimes people say, well, it's no wonder because in Brazil you get so much help for home. But when I look into our Argentina, Buenos Aires office, there are no women. So it's really interesting to see how offices actually differ, and then to understand what is behind that.
Yeah, and I researched a bit, and there's practically no public numbers available. Comatch, which is a platform for freelance consultants, they had a survey recently which says about 20% of freelance consultants are women. But I know that Laura, from her research, has some insights into the biggest hurdles and the biggest challenges women face when getting into leadership roles and professional services. And Laura, could you change those with us?
Of course. And I hope you can hear me okay. I think people get extremely frustrated about why change is taking so long. And I think it's partly because we are very much focused on our own generation. But we need to look upon this as a much broader set of societal trends. And if we go back to the early stages of the women's movement post World War II, or even thinking about how long it took women to get the vote, these are really very significant changes that we're pushing for that impact on many, many different areas. And I think we tend to lose sight of that. And in doing so, we become very frustrated by the But if you look upon just the variety of different explanations for gender imbalance in professional firms that have been mooted in recent years, I think there are broadly 5 great culprits. People that are blamed, situations that are blamed. And the first one is the women themselves. This is what we talk about, the deficit model when it comes to gender. So arguments that women don't understand what it takes to succeed in a professional firm, or believe they haven't got it. And the solution to these might be, they need more training, they need more mentoring, they need more work on confidence. So that's one set of explanations. Or there's another way of blaming the women, which is to say they do understand what it takes, but they don't think it's worth it. So there are issues around ambition, and there's the whole idea of lean in and Sheryl Sandberg. But these are all deficit models. So this is why the problem is with the women. How do we fix the women? And I'm not disputing any of those. There is truth in all of those explanations. A second set of culprits are the men. So men like Hubert are trying very hard to promote women, but it's not working at EY because he's unconsciously biased. So we need to send Hubert on some training, and then he can confront those unconscious biases, and then everything will be all right. And then when that doesn't make a difference, it's, Hubert, you need more training. Or maybe it's because your men are hardwired to be more competitive and clubbable than women. So men just try harder, and they hang out together. So that's a kind of Mars versus Venus explanation. So there's just things about Hubert's testosterone, which is going to make him different from Constanze's estrogen, and that's just how it is. So these are all, and I'm not disputing any of these. There is truth in all of this. Then it's the firms themselves. So here, we look at the systems, that the firms fail to develop gender-neutral reward and promotion systems, or they perpetuate these very opaque and exclusionary ways of assigning women to projects. So the answer then is, we need more, thinking really deeply about how we address these issues at a board level and challenge them. But then there's a fourth set of culprits, which are the clients. So the clients claim to support change whilst actually clinging to traditional working practices with regard to the long hours culture and the expectation of always on behaviour from their professionals. Or worse and more perniciously, they use the power that they have as clients to engage in unambiguous sexism and sexual exploitation. I'm not disputing any of these. All this is true. And then there's the fifth culprit, the really big culprit, which is society as a whole. The society evaluates and rewards men and women differently, and through their economic, their legal, and their societal structures, they perpetuate disadvantage for women. All of these things are true. Everything I've said is true up to some point, for some people more so than others. So then we ask ourselves, why haven't we fixed it yet? Well, because it is infinitely complex, densely interwoven set of issues. And we keep bashing away at whatever happens to be the issue of the month that's been most recently identified, and people tell themselves that, trying to fix it, and then after a while they say, oh, nothing's changing. And it's because all of these things are densely interconnected. And one extra element, particularly when it comes to child rearing, some research I've done is there's another set of factors we need to blame here, which is the parents. We need to blame our mothers and our fathers for how they have created expectations about what good mothering and what good fathering is. So we are going way back. And it is therefore not surprising that, in the space of a few decades, we haven't transformed the world.
Well, thank you very much. That was, we've all been nodding. And Constanze, can you relate to these issues?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an excellent summary, Laura. And, Laura told me she doesn't like to talk about that subject, but it seems that this is her subject. That tells you a lot about Laura. I can fully relate to it. I have to say that I myself went through a journey of really understanding how complex that topic is. And when we at Baker McKinsey look at it, we look from all these dimensions. We look at how we work with women, but equally important, how we work with our male colleagues to make them allies of that topic. Men feel that it is a threat for them when we promote gender equality, and we need to make them understand that it's really about creating a level playing field and not about creating advantages for women. And we're working as an organization exactly on those topics which Laura raised, which is promotion criteria, to make sure that we have gender neutral promotion criteria, because it is clearly not what we're having. We have promotion criteria as many professional service firms which are very number-based. It is often more difficult for young women to meet these criteria. We should rather look into the future. We should need to be much more strategic and say, who do we need as partners in our future in order to bring our organization forward? With respect to clients, interesting what you said, Laura. I fully agree with what you said. But in fact, for us at Baker McKinsey, it is the clients who help us today to move forward, because it is our clients who are telling us that if we do not come to a pitch with a gender balanced team, if we do not have females on our teams, they will not hire us. And when we pitch today for work, we are typically asked by our clients on our gender representation, how many women we have in the different offices. And there are even clients who tell us that if we do not have women on the team, they will cut the invoice by 10%. So that helps us, because sometimes, unfortunately, that is what some of our colleagues need to hear in order to understand that change is necessary.
Yeah. So that's really impressive. I mean, the clients being such a great force in this respect, and also threatening with the fees, because that's what hurts most, obviously. And I can't see Hubert at the moment, but I wanted to ask him how he, as a testosterone possibly subject to training a person feels. But we seem
I'm
to have...
worried that he disappeared almost immediately after I personalized my my commentary. As soon as I mentioned testosterone, the picture went away.
He's not easily scared. I've known him for a while, so let me see if I have a message from him. No, not yet. So all right, I get a message. There's a technical problem that he has, so we can't ask him on that. It would have been really interesting, because one of the things, Laurie, that you said to me was that this thing called homophilia, where everybody has been buddies for a long time, and from my experience, that is a really, really big issue. And I don't know if you want to explain that for a second, what you mean by that.
One of the things that we look at in diversity, understanding in the context of diversity research, is the phenomenon of homophily, which means one's desire to love people like you. But I think it's the way it's termed in this context. It helps to explain why there are such significant barriers and costs associated with bringing people not like you into the group. A lot of my research on partnership, I've studied firms that have been in existence for many years, and where the partnership have generally joined from university roughly about the same time. So the people moving up into the most senior positions might have been at the same universities together. They'll have trained together and they'll have moved up as a cohort. It's the cohort effect, going up through every stage of the firm. So there they are, late 40s, early 50s, and they've known each other for 20 years. They may have strong family connections as well. Their families know each other. And this is a hugely effective and efficient way of organizing, because so much doesn't need to be said. There is an intuitive understanding of how things work, and you know how people are going to behave. You're not surprised by things, and there's a kind of a self-perpetuating sense of comfort and reassurance that you can get, even if you don't like the people that you've been having to work with for the last 20 years. You've learned to rub along. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, I think a lot of professional service firms and a lot of partnerships are able to cope, to get by with very light management structures, very little intrusive intervention, without really strict corporate hierarchies, because so much is just taken for granted and doesn't need to be spelled out. So the problem is when you bring people in who haven't gone through that, who don't look and sound like you, and this isn't just about gender, this is about class, this can be about sexuality, and this can certainly be about race, but people who for whatever reason are not part of this homophilous group, they represent a challenge and a threat. And it doesn't matter how much you might want to be open to that, it is still complicated, because suddenly all sorts of things which you never had to think about before, you're having to try and explain. You're having to try and make sense of, and then as you try to explain them, you realize they don't make any sense, and that is threatening. You find this particularly, and I think maybe Constanze might have found this in a global organization, where you have for example, the London office, where everyone just knows how things are, and then suddenly they merge with a German firm, and it's whoa, they just don't get it, they just don't understand. Well, bringing women and men together in these environments, it's a bit like a series of creating a global merger, a whole bunch of people who just didn't grow up in this same kind of homophilous group.
Yeah. It's very interesting that I was once told by a partner that I will never make partner because all important decisions are made on the toilet, and I would never be there. So that was my first encounter with really with this phenomenon, really. Constanze, what do you see at Baker McKenzie?
Just to pick up on Laura's point, there was a question in the chat on learnings from the Brazil office. So what is the learnings? The moment you have a number of women, 30+% women in partnership, then this male networking is no longer there, because it then they become part of the network, and then it becomes much easier actually to socialize among this group. In addition to that, once you have women in these leadership roles, you have role models, and our young colleagues look for role models. They want to see and want to have proof that others have actually made it to be successful. And if you have no one up there, then they will not have the courage, will not think that it is a likely way for them to be the first one. So that's what we're really seeing. But absolutely, to Laura's point, we're seeing it even, and also now in the COVID crisis, we're seeing again that when work becomes scarce, people tend to give work to those closest to them, who they understand, who think like them, who look like them, who do things exactly like them, which poses a huge threat to gender equality and to our minorities. But Ingrid, I'd like to pick up on another point. I said before that in Germany it is especially difficult. And I think it's interesting to ask why that is. And there's this social pressure on women out there not to work. And it's more than in other countries. So I hear, for example, from a partner at our firm who has a husband and 2 children, and the husband is the caretaker of the children, and she's the breadwinner. Still, she got attacked for coming back after 8 weeks to work, because people were telling her that a woman doesn't do that. Yeah? Same with me. When I was up to become an equity partner at Baker McKenzie, I had a number of partners who came to me to say, why are you so ambitious? You have 3 children, you have a husband. Why do you think you need to be a partner? You would be much better off to just stay at where you are. And you know, they made me feel guilty. They made me feel guilty for being ambitious. A man would never be asked that question. So there are hurdles, invisible hurdles for women they have to overcome. And we can only approach it if we make ourselves aware of these hurdles to try to address it.
One question that I have is, and what I find is that people in professional services our age, in their 50s, they are much more still grounded in these beliefs, versus I work with a number of firms where the CEO, the managing partners are in their 30s. And my impression is that for them, it is much more natural to work in at least male, female, diverse environments. Is that something that you can confirm from any of your observations or research even?
Yes, but I think there is something developing which makes me uncomfortable. So on the one hand, for women of our generation, we were raised in the time of a belief in equality, and our objective was to earn the right to be treated on equal terms with men. And Constanze made the comment about looking for role models. I doubt that Constanze and I ever looked for role models or ever felt the need for role models, because they just weren't there, right? I never compared myself with other women. I compared myself with successful people and found male mentors. So I didn't, I'm sure I was absorbing a huge amount of unconscious sexism, but I was almost deliberately blind to the barriers, because if I could see the barriers, I would never have the courage to try and break them down. For later generations, I think the younger men are more evolved than the men that we were having to work with. Remember that the men who were holding us back are now in their 70s and their 80s. I mean, it's a very different generation. But what troubles me is the way in which the rhetoric around diversity has been so powerful that I think a lot of younger women have absorbed the idea that unless I see role models like me, I can't aspire. And no one who doesn't look like me can represent me. So I get a lot of I hear a lot from younger women saying that, oh, you know, we must have a women's voice on the board, for example. And I'm on the board of my business school now, and I think, well, is that all I am? Am I there to talk for all women? Is that all that you see me as a woman? Maybe I'm not going to say things that you agree with. Can't we as women disagree with each other? And it's almost like going back to the very old-fashioned ideas that much older men might have said to us as, oh, well, it's very nice to hear the women's perspective, or, well, Constanze, as a woman, what do you think? And we've somehow, in a weird kind of way, gone full circle to this kind of essentialist argument that every time we are present, we have to represent women rather than just be who we are, of which we are many things. Women is one of them, but for me, it's probably not my top 3 things. It's just what I am. So I am concerned the way it's which young women are somehow mobilizing this diversity rhetoric almost to hold themselves back, and it seems illogical to me. Does that make sense, what I've just said?
I understand what you say. I'm not sure I 100% agree, because even when I was young, when I was starting my career, I was always the one to be put in front by my male colleagues to say, look, we have a woman. So I was always pushed into that role, and after a certain time, I just hated it because I didn't want to be seen as the woman who they are promoted. And look, we are making a woman partner. Aren't we great to do this? Because I didn't feel that I was being promoted because I was a woman. I was promoted although I was a woman. And this I found at that time upsetting, and I just completely did away with it. I'm with you, Laura, fully, that when I was young, when I made my career, the diversity and inclusion topics were not top of my mind. I just went my way. I just went step by step, and I did not feel that I had any disadvantages. I felt at that time that if I just worked hard and just kept on going, I could do it. And only today, looking back, having daughters in that age who are just starting to enter the workplace, being the global chair of our Diversity Inclusion Committee and talking to so many women, I do understand the complexity of the topic, and I do understand the difficulties. And when I look back today at my career, I have to say I've been very lucky for 2 men who have helped me. Without them, whom I would have never made it. One is my husband, who's always stood behind me and always said, yes, you can do it, whenever I was shaky myself. When I came home and said, my partner think I shouldn't move forward, he said, are you crazy? Go for it. And the other one was my long year mentor. And that was by no means a given, and not all women have that mentor. I had a mentor who always fought for me. Whenever it came to a decision on my promotion, he would be standing up there in front of the partners and would be fighting for me. And he would come to me and he would give me feedback. And sometimes he would give me hard feedback and say, Constanze, if you don't work on this area, you're not going to make it here. So you better get your act together. So this was extremely helpful. And I have to just be very grateful for having had that. But not everyone has it. And therefore, mentoring programs are important. We at Baker McKenzie have a program where we provide our female talent with sponsors, institutionalized sponsors, because we know that women just don't have as many sponsors and as strong sponsors as men have. And without sponsors, without mentors, you don't make it.
I think on the subject of sponsorship, something I only became aware of retrospectively, and this is here I'm speaking from a personal perspective, which I don't ever think I think an academic should not do. You don't bring me on to these things to speak from a personal perspective, but I will. One of the things I came to understand, because I started work in a brutally misogynistic environment of investment banking in the early 1980s, where to heck with being successful, the primary objective was to avoid being sexually molested. I mean, let's be quite explicit about this, to make it through the day without being physically or verbally sexually assaulted. And one of the things I learned was to really replicate the kind of father-daughter relationship with powerful men. I realized that, I mean, I'm not advocating that people do this now, they shouldn't have to, but I realized that in an environment that was essentially very sexually predatory, the only way to make yourself safe, sexually safe, was to be protected by the most powerful man. And if you didn't want to have a sexual relationship with him, which I didn't, what you could do was replicate a father-daughter relationship. And that is why I was able to have some incredibly powerful mentoring relationships at different stages in my career, because by presenting myself as the intelligent, inquisitive daughter who wanted to learn from the powerful man, I made myself sexually taboo to him. And in the process, I didn't just make myself safe physically, I also got a really, really powerful sponsor professionally. And I think that just learning how it would, in an ideal world, no one would have to learn these kinds of hard lessons. But I think the reality is, competitive organizations are very hard, and men learn their own very hard lessons. So I think to not always just default to the assumption that women must look to other women for support, to learn how to mobilize support across the board is really, really powerful.
That's very interesting. And I just hear that we have Hubert back, and but our fourth audio isn't working. So Laura, may we just mute you for a second and have Hubert back on stage? So I hope he's coming. Here we go, Hubert. Almost.
I'm coming in with both now. That's even better.
Yeah, we go. There you are. We can see you. We only have 3 audio canals, so we had to mute Laura for a second to have you back in. Welcome back. We've just, I don't know, have you been part of have you heard the discussion?
I'm in with the phone, so I listened to the discussion. So I have to clean up a few things. The decision making on the toilet is over. Yeah. So
good.
Men are washing hands these days. There are no decisions on the toilets anymore. But good. To make it also very clear, it's still in some parts of the world a man's world where it shouldn't be. And just to put it into context, I'm really one of those guys. When I enter a room and I see only men, I feel shocked, because this shouldn't be the case, at least not in professional services, nor in any industry. And I think to the topic, you started off with the unconscious bias thing. We have to work on it. Yes, I have to go to school. I have 2 daughters. I have a wonderful wife, and they teach me sometimes new lessons. But also my family, they come back and say, my daughter just came back from an interview or from a case study that she did. She entered the room and one person was saying, "Oh, I thought you were a guy." And she felt like, "Oh, no, I'm a lady and I can work on that topic and I'm smart and I can help you." But right from the start, there was this unconscious bias where we all have to work on. From my point of view, the biggest issue that has changed, and that's a good thing, is really when I started my career, it was almost impossible when you take off a couple of months because the family got bigger and we have 3 children. that was something like work-life balance. Men are taking care of children for a couple of months. That was almost impossible. At least from my experience, what I have in discussions with my colleagues, that has changed. So the whole thing with regard to work-life balance or acceptance of flexibility or parenthood, that's really now in the market, that's really now within the companies, and it's well accepted. Are all of the companies brilliant there yet? No, but it's really, there is a mind shift that has happened. This, from my point of view, is really something that has been achieved, but we have to work on that, improving in that direction.
Okay.
What strikes me when it comes to leadership, that's my last argument, is I observe there are a number of smart women, they're really good, but when it comes to offering a career, they're still balanced. They say, when I see how tough it is, how much hours I have to work, how much expectations are put on that level, they say, I rather stick where I am. And this is something we also have to change, because leadership does not mean you work 80 hours a week. Leadership means you lead people, and I'm of the opinion smart leaders can do that with the time they need for that. There shouldn't be an hour or a life model be next put to that. It should really be a model based on experience, based on knowledge, and also based on the tasks that are being questioned here. And it should not be some kind of gender or whatever reason.
So in 5 minutes, we want to open for the questions from the audience. And before that, I would really be interested to hear what can be done to change. And one of the questions that Constanze already addressed was, can we support women with special mentoring programs? Laura said everybody has to go into training. Is that then something that really does change? What's your, and it's not, it only didn't just start. So many firms have already worked on these issues for a number of years. Can you see a development? Headwinds, Constanze, for your work in the diversity and inclusion space, which is much broader than just women. But is there a lot of headwinds, or do you feel a change happening, and what can be done?
Yeah, we do see change happening. Last year at Baker McKenzie, we introduced targets, gender aspiration targets, which are 40-40-20. 40 male, 40 female, 20 flexible, for also non-binary people. And that was a big step for us. We were the first large professional law firm to do that. And of course, a number of our male colleagues felt threatened by it. But we got a broad support by all managing partners. We now have reporting tools where we hold our offices, practice groups, industry groups, committees accountable to meet these targets. We will need some time until we're there, but we have a clear pathway on how we will achieve these targets over time. There's a lot of learning and understanding on these topics, on the unconscious bias in many programs. With respect to mentoring, just one word on that. I'm very reluctant on these leadership programs for women. You know, I often don't like them because they tend to teach women that they should behave more like men, and that's all wrong. We know that. We all can only be strong if we are authentic, if we remain who we are. Because if we're trying to be someone else, we will fail. So these programs go in the wrong direction, but still to have mentors, have sponsors for women to help them along their way and to tell them that they should be authentic and that they should continue wearing dresses if they like to wear dresses, and that they don't need to look like a man and don't need to lower their voice, but can just continue.
Super. Hubert, what do you say? What can be done? Do you still hear us? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, it's not the women that have to fix that. it's the companies and it's the management within the companies and the society that has to fix it. Two aspects here. Number one, in general, and we are really looking at who are the founders, who are the entrepreneurs who want to lead, and we have to encourage women much more to set up new companies, to go to business and to lead, and really give them the comfort you can lead. And there are so many excellent examples out there, but there must be some sort of promotion towards that. Otherwise, there is a bit of shyness to that, which shouldn't be the case. The second part I would like to highlight, within the companies, there is a lot being done already. When I look at EY and other companies, basically when it comes to promotions, it's always like there must be some sort of gender equality when it comes to promotions. So we really have to take care of it. First, sure, is the knowledge and the expertise, but the gender aspect must be embedded in here. What we have is basically, whatever we go to a promotion level, it must be, if you promote people, it must be gender equal from the group you're coming from to the next level. So that's really something you have to take care of. And also, when I look at the workforce and its entirety, the talent pool of qualified employees does not consist only of men. It consists of men and women, and we're lagging basically the talent and the expert peoples. And there is no need and there is no reason for any underrepresentation of women, because there is no competitive advantage or disadvantage. It's really all about execution. That's really, I ask my fellow colleagues here, execute on it and be tough and clear about treating it the same way without all those biases that are around there.
Laura, is there anything in your research, or you're not only researching, you're also consulting to professional service firms, that has impressed you in terms of what can be done to promote more diversity and especially gender equality?
Not especially.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing that stands out really strongly, because I see it part of as a system. So everything that Hubert's talking about, everything Constanze is talking about, is all part of the system, and they are all important. But there isn't the point of it, thinking of this as a dense and complex system, is that nothing in particular is going to stand out. It's going to be about how all the pieces fit together. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about this in the last few months in the context of the Black Lives Matter movement and the very strong rhetoric, at least in the UK at the moment, around Black and ethnic minorities, as triggered by recent events in the States and everything. And I've been sort of mapping a lot of those discussions onto gender discussions and trying to just, what if we swap the words around? What we're hearing, how is what we're hearing different or similar from what's been said about gender for many decades? And I think what really strikes me is the extent to which it's time to let go of arguing for the business case. I think Hubert talked about it's neither a competitive advantage or a disadvantage, and I found that really, I'm really glad that you said that. I think for too long, really since the 1980s, this business case has been constructed so that women have to somehow justify their right to be included in the workplace by demonstrating in somehow that it leads to enhanced financial performance or performance on any number of metrics. And there's been an infinite amount of research done on this, which the high quality academic research, most of it is not high quality academic research, is very subtle, is very nuanced, and is not consistent. It is not a straightforward story. And Ingrid, I know you yourself know that the arguments that having more women on boards leads to better performing boards is highly, highly controversial, and it has not been proven irrefutably. So that really got me back to thinking about how it's time to revive the moral case. I think when it all started, when people were arguing for things as of right, women were arguing from a relatively weak position, and they needed to create and construct this business case to try and have their voice heard. But our voice has now been heard, and I think it's time to have the courage to go further and argue really forcefully for the moral case. Because if we look, I was thinking back to the history of slavery and the anti-slavery movement, and there was it took decades of really active campaigning, first of all to abolish the slave trade, and then it required a civil war in America to get rid of slavery as a whole. So again, we shouldn't beat ourselves up too much for not having solved the problem of gender inequality in the space of a couple of decades. But at the time, there was a very strong economic argument for getting rid of slavery, to argue that it was, from a mercantilist perspective, that it was inhibiting the effective functioning of labour markets, etc. It was enabling dysfunctional businesses to succeed, etc., etc. The point is, now, 200 years on, the idea that you would make a business case for abolishing slavery is offensive and ridiculous. And the point is, that argument didn't work. It was the moral case that worked. The activities of church people, of deeply, deeply committed people coming from a strongly spiritual position, arguing for the rights of Black people as humans to be treated equally. So I think we should have the courage to let go of the business case. That has served its purpose, and to come back to the moral case and argue that forcefully, because I think only then are we really going to be able to push forward to the next stage.
When we talked before this session, I really like that piece of your argument, because I think that's exactly the right track. Let's open the discussion for questions from the panel, and there's a first question for Hubert, and it is, what's your personal contribution as CEO of EY to support women?
Yeah, pretty good question. I can, just what I do personally, that you get an understanding of how I act. Whenever I see a leadership group with men only, I'll go to the person who is leading that group. In that case, if it's men only, he will get a tough question from me. Why are there only men within your group? You have to change it now to bring females into that group. There's no discussion about it. That will change immediately. When I'm working on the engagements, on the jobs, diverse teams, in almost any engagement I'm working with, I'm either part of the team or we're a duo, combined team, men and women, diverse teams. The third part I'm personally doing, I'm coaching a number of women, bringing them into leadership team. And the fourth point, this is the most difficult one for me, and this is where maybe I need your help. I see many women, they're real talents, but they don't want to move ahead. They say, no, Hubert, I want to stay where I am, but I see the talent now in them, but they're not willing to move ahead and take the opportunity to basically developing themselves in that directions. Sometimes I'm really struggling because they leave the firm a year afterwards and say, no, I want to have a quieter environment. But from my point of view, 5 years later, they will detect, at least that's my personal opinion, they will detect, why didn't I took that chance at that point of time and made my life easier? I know it's a balanced question, but this is really the one who strikes me the most, because I'm a network person and I really like to develop people. And when I see the talent, I really want to develop it. And that's something I'm a bit struggling on the female side here. But with men, I have sometimes the same problem, but less, because they have, as you all know, sometimes the more ego, because I have more men that are coming to me, I can do it, I want to do it, and I have the different opinion. So it's really a bit of balance what I'm confronted here with.
So we're almost close to our session, but because you asked for help, maybe Laura has an answer for you, and we'll mute you for a second, Hubert, and put Constanze back on, and maybe those two have a final word to your question.
I listen to that. That's my optimist.
Well, as you were speaking of it, I thought there were so many different strands of ways of responding to what you were saying. So I don't have a simple answer. I think I was really pleased to hear what you said. I thought having a better understanding of why women don't want to press forward in these areas. I mean, again, speaking from my own personal experience, when people push me to apply for leadership positions in my university, I mean, my response is simply, why on earth would I want to do that? Only an idiot would want to do that job. I'm really pleased that you are doing that job. You know, these roles are not necessarily particularly attractive or fulfilling. And we can look at the fundamental reasons why that might be the case. We can look at the reasons what it is in some men that may cause them to push really hard for these jobs which are fundamentally unattractive. We can look at how to change these jobs, and we can look at how to address the lack of confidence in a woman, which may mean that she genuinely doesn't believe she'll be able to cope with the strain. And when she gets the job, help her when she struggles. So it's going to be all of these factors. But for me, it starts with the fact if you have a shit senior job, you shouldn't be too surprised that a lot of women aren't eager to do it. My question is, why do you want to do it?
So thank you, Laura, for that. That was really that was really good, very good summary. Constanze, anything you would like to add to help Hubert with his predicament?
Yeah, a few thoughts on that. First of all, of course, and I think we all agree, not everyone needs to thrive for a high-profile career. You know, it's everyone's own decision, how they want to lead their life, and I think it's absolutely okay for a man as for a woman to decide that they do not want a full career, that they want to work part-time, or that they want to stay home if they're happy that way. So I think that's really important to always acknowledge that it's not the ultimate goal for everyone to have a career. As to what you say, Hubert, I'm challenging that, because when we have been doing surveys at Baker McKenzie asking our colleagues on whether they want to become partner or not want to become partner. And we're also looking at exit interviews. Why do people leave us? And interesting that women want to become partner. So it's almost this identical statistic. So it's not that the women tell us we don't even want to go there. But from exit interviews, we know that more women think that they have no chance to have a career than men. So the number one reason why someone would leave the firm, and I said at the beginning that many more women than men are leaving the firm, the number one reason is that they say, I don't see that I will be able to have a career in this firm. Mm-hmm. And that's what we see, where we see we need to help. We need to help these women to understand that they have a realistic chance to actually have a career in this firm. And then my third and last comment on this is we know there is this confidence gap. And Laura raised it at the beginning of our session, that women tend to have less confidence than men. And there are also explanations why that is. And don't need to get into that today. But what we need to help women, and their mentoring can be helpful, that it is important to sometimes have the courage to just take a step, even though we're not 100% sure we're able to do it. And to do that once will help you to do it again and again and again. And that's what is a recommendation which I have for women, to try it, to have the courage, to be prepared to also fail, because only if we're prepared to fail will we be able to move ahead and to be successful.
Well, thank you, Constanze. I think that was a very good final comment, because we're at an hour and a minute, and we promised everybody to be on time. So as usual, so many things uncovered in a session like this. And maybe we can at some point continue the discussion, because it's well worth going deeper into this. Thank you very, very much for being here, for taking the time, and for these great insights. I can see in the chat, thanks for great advice, Hubert, and thank you for great discussion. People are leaving, so we are all leaving. We're keeping the questions, and we'll see how we deal with the unanswered and remaining questions. And there is a small survey at the end of this. If you please complete the small survey, that would be super. And then thank you very much.
Thank you so much for participating today and for coming to this FIDA on webinar. We have one little Umfrage left for you. Just your feedback. Would love to know what you thought about this webinar. And please follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And yeah, discuss important subjects with us. Visit our next webinar. We're really happy you were a part of this one. Thank you so much.